So welcome, I'm Adam Wasserman here. I'm one of the board members for UUJEC, UU's for a Just Economic Community. Just for Maya and Molly, this is a group, it's a national organization of Unitarians, and we have members and member congregations all over the country. So you'll have people here from many parts of the US. I'm from New Mexico, for instance. Terry, I think, is in Florida. Lucy's in Oregon. So, we do these. We do a variety of things, but we do these webinars every month on some issue related to economic and social justice. And we've been very focused for the past couple years on the Green New Deal and on issues relating to environmental justice. So that's, particular reason why it's very good to have you here with us. So I'm gonna, before I introduce our speaker, Maya van Rossum, I just wanna alert people to the webinar we're gonna have a month from now on April 8th. So you can put it on your calendar. We're gonna have Dar Jamail, who is the author of a book called The End of Ice that came out in 2019. And Dar, I've heard him speak. He's very eloquent. He's a reporter and researcher. He did a lot of groundbreaking work on the war in Iraq. And but more recently, he's turned his attention to environmental issues and to global warming. He has, I think, a column on truthout.org called Climate Disruption Dispatches. And and here's his book, The End of Ice, Bearing Witness and Finding Meaning in the Path of Climate Disruption. I think it's fair to say that Jamal pulls no punches in talking about what we can expect if we don't tackle this problem. So I hope you'll put that on your calendar for April 8th, the same time, 6 p.m. Or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So
I can second that, Adam. I've heard Dar speak twice. He's from my area near Seattle, and he's very humble, but very compelling.
Right.
And he really does his research in a very vivid way.
Yeah. But our speaker tonight, I'm very pleased to have with us Maya van Rossum. She's has one of the great titles here in sort of all, if you had to have a job title, she's the Delaware Riverkeeper, which is, I think Riverkeeper sounds like something out of the Lord of the Rings, but it's a real thing. And she leads an advocacy organization called the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. But she is going to speak to us tonight about the Green Amendments. And this is something, Maya has written a book called The Green Amendment, Securing Our Right to a Healthy Environment. The founder of a movement, Green Amendments for the Generations, which is a nonprofit effort to try to get at the state level, though I think ultimately at the national level as well, constitutional amendments that would make environmental rights to clean air, to clean water, to healthy soil, individual human rights on a par with our rights to speech and other things that are, and putting them in state constitutions gives them a special power of enforcement that I know that you will talk about. And she is, I've heard her speak several times. She is very articulate and very energetic. And I know, Maya, that, I'm here in New Mexico. The Green Amendment is something that is working its way through our legislature, and I know other legislatures around the country. So I hope you will bring us up to date on where it stands here and in other places in the United States. So I will turn this over to Maya. We will speak for 30 minutes or something close to that, and then we'll have a open question and answer.
Great. Well, I thank you very, very much for that kind introduction. I super appreciate it. I am going to ask if I could have screen sharing possibilities so I can do my PowerPoint. And while you're setting that up, I'm going to apologize for it being a little bit dark here. We're trying to create a new home office space and the lighting is a little dark. And I've only been in this space for 2 days. And so this is my now realization. So I do apologize for that. I'm just waiting for the screen sharing, who's ever in charge of that. But I do appreciate everybody from around the nation chiming in. And I think that this is a message that hopefully will resonate with everybody and there's something in it for everybody. So I'm all glad that you have chimed in. Who's in charge of this screen sharing? How's it going, Terry?
Well, I'm trying to find where we do that.
So you could do that by, if you click on Maya's name and her co-host, then she'll have some greater capabilities.
Okay, on.
We've got your screen, and that's yeah, right.
Sorry, everybody.
I'm supposed to click on your name. Well, now maybe you are. Okay. Did you get the screen share?
Your screen, Terry, I think.
Can you pass me that ball of yarn under your hand?
You're
Yeah.
sharing the screen. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like you're still sharing your screen. So if you scroll to the top of your screen, you'll see a little menu bar and you'll be able to stop share.
Okay.
And then in the participant list, if you hover over Maya's name, you'll be able to make her a co-host and then she'll have some greater capabilities.
The young person tells everybody.
I
I'm a
know.
Zoom expert.
I
So there
was
should,
on
I-
should be some blue buttons when you hover over somebody's name.
Oh,
So
just a second. It's some more. Okay.
yes,
Make host. There you go.
Perfect. Okay, let's get this puppy. All righty.
all right.
I think that we have gotten this show on the road. I super appreciate that. And again, I thank you for the kind introduction, Adam. I'm really super excited to be here with everybody from across the nation to talk about this really important issue. At least I think this really important pathway. You already gave a kind introduction. Just to clarify, right? I am wearing 2 hats. My first hat is as the Delaware Riverkeeper and leader of the 4-state organization, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. But I'm here tonight as an author of the Green Amendment, but the founder of this National Green Amendment for the Generations movement. And Green Amendments for the Generations and this movement is really about advancing a new and needed pathway for environmental protection. And whenever anybody who's been working in environmental issues for any period of time hears me say, I'm here to posture a new pathway for environmental protection, inevitably somebody in the room says, well, criminy sakes, how is it possible that we need a new pathway for environmental protection? At least not here in the United States of America. After all, if you look at any state across our nation and at the federal level, we have literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of environmental protection laws, rules, and regulations when you look from the local level all the way up to the federal level. And of course, we've got all kinds of agencies and policies and programs, and all of these are supposed to be focused on environmental protection. So how is it possible that there's space for something more? Well, the thing is, the way this system of environmental laws works, the way our system of government works, is fundamentally, they are all focused on leaving consideration of environmental pollution and degradation and what to do about it to the end of the decision-making process, when really all you can focus on is what are the permits that you're going to give to manage the who, the when, the where you allow the pollution and degradation to take place? It is not, the system of laws and system of government is not focused fundamentally on how do we prevent pollution and prevent degradation from day one that we are engaged in government action, decision-making, legislating, permitting, regulating. And in this system of laws, there are a lot of gaps. There are a lot of things that are not regulated or not regulated until it's way too late after the horse is out of the barn. For example, if you're talking about PFAS or fracking, right? When these things first came out, we didn't have the rules and regulations to prevent the harm in the first place. And all over the place, in any state across the nation, there are so many gaps in the law that there are so many things that are allowed to advance without legal protections in place. All too often, with the laws that we do have on the books, there's poor implementation for any number of reasons, right, wrong, or otherwise. I really don't care. All too often, we have poor implementation of even the laws we do have on the books. And inevitably, at one point or another, somebody gets into government office that doesn't appreciate the importance and values of a healthy environment and works very, very hard to use their position of power to roll back even the protections that we do have on the books. And sadly, in this system of government laws and regulations, environmental racism is literally built in. With communities of color, indigenous communities, immigrant and low-income communities continually and intentionally targeted for highly polluting industrial operations and environmentally degrading actions and activities. This environmental racism, this unfair bias doesn't happen in spite of the laws that we have on the books. It happens because of them, because of how they're written and because of how they're implemented. And so as a result, we have people and communities across the nation that are drinking polluted water, breathing contaminated air, living next to toxic sites that are impacting their health and their lives and their livelihoods and their property values in any number of ways. We have species of all kinds that are being impacted. And of course, we're facing a climate crisis and much, much more. And so we can just see by what's happening on the ground, despite the fact that we have all these laws and rules and regulations and policies and programs and agencies, something fundamentally important is missing from the way we protect the environment here in the United States of America. And we know that because of all the devastation we continue to see on the ground. Well, there's a gentleman, Senator Franklin Curry from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, who realized what one of the most essential missing elements was when it came to protecting the environment in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He recognized years ago that one of the fundamental failings of environmental protection in that state was that we were not regulating, we were not protecting the environment in the same way we protect all of those other human, civil, and political rights we hold dear. We were not protecting the rights to clean air and pure water, a stable climate, and healthy environments as powerfully as we protect things like the right to free speech and freedom of religion, the right to peaceably assemble, private property rights, gun rights. We were not protecting our rights to a healthy environment in the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions, where we protect all of those other fundamental rights. And so Senator Curry decided that he was going to change that. And decades ago, because of the vision and the work of Senator Franklin Curry in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in the Bill of Rights section of their state constitution, they have a provision known as Article 1, Section 27, that recognizes and protects the rights of all the people to clean air and pure water and a healthy environment, and the duty of all government officials to protect the natural resources of that state for the benefit of all the people, including both present and future generations yet to come. Now, you would have thought, right, with the passage of this constitutional environmental rights amendment decades ago, that environmental protection in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania would have been far superior than it was in every other state across our nation. But that really isn't the case. with regards to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There's just as much pollution and degradation and devastation as any other state across the nation. And in fact, if you know anything about Pennsylvania, you know that the fracking industry had been allowed to run rampant across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for decades, despite the fact that we had Article 1, Section 27 in the Bill of Rights section of the state constitution. So how is that possible? How is it? What is the disconnect? Well, sadly, very early on, very shortly after Article 1, Section 27 was added to the Constitution in Pennsylvania, there was a real overreach in how people sought to use this constitutional right. And long story short, I don't need to go into the details. Some of those details are in the book. But long story short, the Pennsylvania courts very quickly, including the Supreme Court, very quickly declared Article 1, Section 27 to be just a statement of policy. That the rights that were articulated in Article 1, Section 27 didn't have the same power and strength and enforceability as every other right in the Bill of Rights section of the Pennsylvania Constitution. And so very literally for 42 years, you had this powerful language in the Constitution, but nothing had changed for the people of Pennsylvania when it came to protection of their environment and their environmental rights. Well, fast forward decades later, right? And in the mid 2000s, here comes fracking for gas to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, bringing with it all of its highly polluting industrial operations, bringing with it the deforestation and the devastation of the natural resources and the landscapes of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, bringing with it pollution of the surface water and the groundwater and even people's drinking water supplies, bringing with it the release of hazardous air pollutants of all kinds, including climate changing methane emissions, bringing with it the proliferation of infrastructure, pipelines, compressor stations, LNG export facilities, and more. And given the lay of the land in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the way things stood in the mid 2000s, with this Article 1, Section 27 declared just to be a policy, and Pennsylvania's books rampant with laws, rules, and regulations focused on permitting pollution and degradation rather than preventing it, it was really pretty easy for the fracking industry to have their way with Pennsylvania's communities and environments. But the industry wanted to have even more power. They wanted to have it be even easier to run roughshod over Pennsylvania's natural resources and environment so that they could pack their wallets in their back pockets and their bank accounts. And so they decided very literally that they were going to make it easier for themselves by writing for themselves a piece of legislation. Literally, leaders in the fracking industry went behind closed doors and they wrote for themselves a piece of legislation that the Pennsylvania legislature passed in 2012 that would make it even easier for the fracking industry. This legislation was literally a gift basket to the fracking industry. And of course it was. They wrote it for themselves, right? So they jam-packed it with all kinds of good stuff. The kinds of things that this law that came to be known as Act 13 did was it put in place automatic waivers from minimal environmental protection standards that might apply to the industry. It relieved the industry of the obligation of notifying people who are in private drinking water wells that their drinking water may have become contaminated by nearby fracking operations. It mandated that drilling and fracking operations be allowed to happen in every part of every community in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, including right next to homes and hospitals and schools and parks. And so, as easy as it was already in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for the fracking industry, if Act 13 had been allowed to be fully implemented, things were going to get even worse for the people of Pennsylvania. Now, in my role as the Delaware Riverkeeper and leading the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, we have been fighting fracking for a very long time. And we knew that when this law passed, we had to find a way to strike it down. We had to find a way to challenge it. But the problem is when you have a law that's passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, there really are very few options for the people to do something about it. You can protest and try to convince the legislators to amend or repeal the law that they had just passed. Fat chance, that wasn't happening in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You could go to the ballot box and try to elect better people to office at the next election and hope that they'll fix it. Well, you know what? That comes too late. The devastation and the damage is already done by that point. You can accept it and move on, which so often is what people do when they lose an environmental battle. They're forced into that position. Well, you know what? We couldn't allow that to happen. We all know the devastations of fracking. So if none of those are an option for you, then the only thing you have left is to try to find a higher power. And we realized and recognized at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network that we had a higher power that would allow us to use the Pennsylvania Constitution to challenge this very pro-fracking law. And so we decided that we were going to challenge the provisions. Now, there were 7 towns that also wanted to challenge Act 13, and we teamed up with them, and we each brought like our own arguments to this joint venture. But the argument that the Delaware Riverkeeper Network brought to this effort was we claimed that the provisions of Act 13 that we were challenging would, if implemented, would violate the environmental rights of the people of Pennsylvania, would violate Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Now, at the time, there was a very conservative Supreme Court in place in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and it was led by a very conservative Chief Justice. And despite that, in December of 2013, we got an amazing victory out of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court with the plurality opinion actually written by that Chief Justice. And I want you to read with me a few of the things that Chief Justice Ronald Castile wrote in the opinion that issued in December of 2013. He wrote that by any responsible account, the exploitation of the Marcellus Shale Formation, the drilling and the fracking, will produce a detrimental effect on the environment, on the people, their children, and future generations. That the natural resources that were being harmed were resources that were essential to life, to health, and to liberty, and that as a result, the provisions of Act 13 that we were challenging were in fact unconstitutional because they would violate the environmental rights of the people of Pennsylvania. And with that victory, we struck down that law before it could even be implemented and wreak its havoc on the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, on their people, on their natural resources, and of course on the future generations suffering from the climate crisis. But not only did we defeat some of the most devastating aspects of Act 13 with this incredible victory, we very literally breathed legal life back into that long ignored constitutional environmental rights amendment. We breathed legal life into Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution and returned to the people of Pennsylvania their constitutional right to pure water and clean air and healthy environments. It was an amazing victory with so many far-reaching ramifications. Now, in the wake of that victory, as you can imagine, we at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network and others inspired by our victory and empowered by our victory have been going forth doing the work of defining what it means to have a constitutional right to a healthy environment and then defending that right. But as we were going forth doing that work day in and day out, and I was thinking more and more about the power of what we had accomplished in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I realized that there was more in this victory than just for the people of Pennsylvania, that there was a message for all people in all communities, in all states across our nation. The message that our rights to pure water and clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments are truly worthy of constitutional recognition and protection. And that we needed communities across our nation to rise up and demand and defend our environmental rights. And we need them to do that through the advancement of what I call a green amendment movement. We need people across the nation to go forth and seek and secure the passage of constitutional green amendments, similar to what the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has. Now, why do I say that we need states across this nation to go forth and have a Green Amendment movement? Well, we need a Green Amendment movement because I have looked at every single state constitution across our nation, and I can tell you with 100% certainty, there are only 2 states that have a constitutional Green Amendment the way I define it, an amendment as powerful as what the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has. And that's Pennsylvania and Montana. And that's it. There are a boatload of other states that talk about the environment in their constitutions, but they don't rise to the level of being a Green Amendment. And there are some states that don't talk about the environment at all. So what is a Green Amendment? What is this most powerful constitutional environmental rights amendment that I'm talking about? Well, there are a lot of things that are powerful and important for a constitutional environmental rights amendment, but there are a few basic essentials. And amongst those, in order to rise to the level of being a Green Amendment, amongst those is that the amendment has to be in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution. And it has to recognize and protect the inalienable rights of all the people to pure water and clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments, or some configuration of those environmental rights. It's not good enough to be in the Bill of Rights section and say that people have the right to fish, hunt, and trap, because that's not the same thing as the right to clean water and clean air. And it's not good enough to say that people have a right to clean water and clean air, but to put it somewhere else in the Constitution other than the Bill of Rights, or declare it to be just good public policy, or something that happens because your legislators will pass environmental protection laws. None of that rises to the level of being a Green Amendment, because none of those things accomplish the protection of environmental rights as powerfully as we protect those other fundamental rights that we hold. So again, there are a number of elements that are essential for a Green Amendment. There are a number of elements that are preferred for a Green Amendment, but amongst the fundamental basics is it has to protect environmental rights as inalienable rights for all people in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution, and be what we call self-executing, meaning it is legally enforceable as soon as it goes on the books. It is not defined by state legislation or regulation. Now, since I sort of came to this epiphany, I have been working very, very hard to try to inspire communities and states across the nation to seek and secure the passage of constitutional environmental rights, and really have been met with amazing power and energy and support. And as a result of this Green Amendment movement that I am trying to marshal forward, we actually, as of this year, have 11 states that have proposed constitutional Green Amendments. Now, they're all at different stages of the process, and in no state is it easy, but there are 11 states where we've got real engagement, and that's New Mexico and Hawaii, Washington, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, West Virginia, Vermont, Kentucky, Oregon, and Maine. And we've got growing interest in a host of other states, notably right now in Delaware, Colorado, and Connecticut. But we've got a lot of work to do everywhere in order to get these environmental rights amendments, these green amendments passed. And of course, we got a lot more states than just a dozen that need to pass constitutional environmental rights. And as Adam said, ultimately, a step 2 is that we want to get, and we need to get, a Green Amendment in our federal Constitution. But strategically, we need to start with the states. Now, before we sort of go on to answering any questions that you might have, I just really want to touch on, how would having a Green Amendment in the state constitution change things if you got one in your state? Now, if you're in Pennsylvania, Montana, you already have it. So these things already apply there. But if you're in any other state across the nation, what would happen? What would change? Now, I can't go into all the ins and outs and all the details, but broad strokes, there's some really important things that happen and happen very quickly. First off, environmental rights are protected as powerfully as we protect those other fundamental rights we hold dear. I mean, I always hate to use this example, but the truth is, people really get it when I use this example. Think about how powerfully the right to bear arms is protected in states across our nation because it's protected in the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions. That same incredible power and strength, legal power, advocacy power, the passions that drive change, all of those things that are brought to bear on the right to bear arms because it's in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution now comes to bear for the environment. That same passion and power and legal strength now rises up to defend our environmental rights. If we have a green amendment passed in your state, it would mean that every government official at every level of government would be constitutionally duty bound to protect the environmental rights of all the people. And they would have to protect those rights, not just for the present generations here today, but the future generations yet to come. It would mean that there would have to be a focus on prevention of harm first, whether government was legislating or regulating, funding, permitting, decision-making. There has to be a focus day one all the way through in the decision-making process on how do we avoid pollution and degradation and infringement on the constitutional rights to a healthy environment. And why is that? Well, if you think about it, if a legislator was about to pass a law that they suddenly realized was going to infringe on the rights of the people to free speech. What would that legislator do when that came to their attention? They would immediately step back and think about how could they recraft that law in order to avoid the infringement on the constitutional right. Or they might give up the law altogether because they would realize necessary to support a constitutional infringement. And they would do that because they are constitutionally bound to protect all of the rights of all of the people in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution. So it comes to play at every single step of the decision-making process when government officials are governing. If you have a green amendment in your state, it is incredibly powerful from an environmental justice perspective because all the people, all individuals, all communities now have the same right to a healthy environment, regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their socioeconomic status. We all have the same right to a healthy environment. And so all government officials become duty bound to protect the environmental rights of all of us equitably. If you have a green amendment, government officials must consider the local conditions that a community is already faced with. Are they already overburdened by historic air pollution or water pollution or soil contamination? That has to come into, has to be taken not just into consideration, but having a direct effect on decision-making that's about to happen to determine whether this new influx of pollution that a government agent is thinking about introducing to a community would, when combined with local conditions, result in a constitutional violation. Government officials have to engage in informed decision-making. They would have to think about the science and the impacts of the decisions that they're about to make before they make them. This becomes a constitutional obligation, all of these things and more, to bring this into an informed decision-making process. And so when you wrap it all together from an environmental justice perspective, what it means is no more sacrifice zones. You simply can no longer constitutionally justify sacrificing one community over and over and over to protect everybody else. Can't happen. Green amendments are not just legally important, but they are very empowering for advocates and for grassroots activism, because no longer when we rise up to champion an protection of the environment in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our state, in our nation, no longer are we just dismissed as tree huggers and fish lovers. No longer are we ridiculed as job killers and people haters. We are now recognized for what we truly are. People who are rising up together to demand and defend the rights, now the constitutional rights of all the people in their community. And here in the United States of America, when you are rising up to champion a constitutional right, you are recognized as what? A US patriot. A patriot rising up to defend the rights of all the people. And well, maybe, for many of us who do environmental activism and advocacy day in and day out, maybe we don't need that extra internal incentive to give us the strength to go on through our advocacy in the face of those horrible name-calling situations. But for many people, it's really empowering because not everybody has that same approach to environmental activism. So it's very empowering emotionally and intellectually. And it also changes the way all the decision makers on the dais receive what you have to say to them, because they've all taken an oath, raised their right hand, right, to champion the Constitution. They know that they are now, duty bound by oath to recognize and protect the environmental rights of all the people. And so when you get up and you say you're talking about the Constitution, it changes how they listen to you and it changes how they behave. The goal of a Green Amendment is to get better decisions in the first place, advance the good and prevent the bad. But the reality of a Green Amendment is when our government officials get it wrong and they overreach and undertake action and activities that will result in a constitutional violation of our environmental rights, a Green Amendment gives us immediate access to the courts. So we can rise up and legally try to vindicate our constitutional right to a healthy environment. And so with that, we are now at the end of my talk, and I hope I've taken you with me on a little bit of a journey to realize and recognize that our current system of environmental protection laws are fundamentally failing us, that we do need something more, we do need something better. And that something more and that something better is available to us right now in the form of the passage of Green Amendments in every single state constitution across our nation. And then again, ultimately, as a step two, the passage of a federal Green Amendment. But strategically, we have to start with the states. There is a book. If you were to choose to get that book, every penny goes back to this Green Amendment movement. No money goes into Maya's pockets because this is all about saving the world, not about making money. So I am going to stop my screen share and see if there are any comments or questions.
Maya, thank you very much. I'm going to, yay. That's very invigorating. I want to encourage people. I think we don't have so many people that I think if you want to, you can write a question, put it in the chat and we'll look at it there, or you can just, speak up and we can deconflict, as we go along. I'm just going to start with one question I wanted to add, because I saw Maya, I think in your latest newsletter, talked about New York State. And it looked like in New York, if I read it right, this has gone through the legislature and is going to be put to the people next November, the amendment or in the referendum, which I think is the process.
So you just told the news. That's perfect. Yeah. So
tell us how did that happen? I mean, New York, that's huge. I mean, New York's a bellwether state. What happens in New York really matters. Can you tell us how you succeeded there?
Well, the way we succeeded in New York is the way that we would succeed everywhere, and where we're trying to succeed is, in that state, most different states, right, have different pathways for a constitutional amendment, but from what I've seen, pretty much every state has a legislative path. And so the legislature puts forth the constitutional amendment language, and then by varying degrees, you have to have passage by both legislative houses once or twice, and then it goes before the people. The governor doesn't have a role, not in any state that I'm currently aware of. And so we really started, New York actually was very early to the Green Amendment game before I wrote my book, before I even started the organization. But as the Delaware Riverkeeper, of course, we are very active in Delaware, New York State, because that's the upper reaches of the Delaware River watershed. And so that was amongst the first places where we really started, and I really started to share this idea of mimicking what Pennsylvania has and passing constitutional environmental rights. And we had some really great partners in the state of New York, environmental advocates of New York and the New York Adirondack Mountain Club. And we teamed up together and convinced the people and communities and legislators to think that this was a good idea. In New York State, the proposed amendment, which is much more basic in language than what we're seeing advance in other states, and truly that I would hope to see advance in other states, but we're getting what we need, which is a Bill of Rights, environmental rights amendment that protects the rights of all the people to clean water and air and a healthful environment. It had to pass through both houses of the legislature twice in 2 consecutive legislative sessions. That second vote happened just within the past couple of months. And so as a result, it will now go before the people in November, and the people get to decide what will happen. We have other states, as you said, Adam, in the state of New Mexico, we have a really vibrant Green Amendment effort going on. Unfortunately, there is a single legislator in charge of a single committee who has chosen not to put the amendment up for a hearing that needs to happen before it can continue to advance through the process. We already were before the Senate Rules Committee, and the Green Amendment passed out of committee. And the second committee is the Judiciary Committee. And unfortunately, Senator Cervantes so far has failed to put the Green Amendment up for hearing. And so we have a very little bit of time left in New Mexico's legislature for it to advance, but it could still happen, because in New Mexico, a constitutional amendment only has to be passed by both houses once and majority vote rules. So we have a week and a half left, and if Senator Cervantes was willing to put it up right away, it is possible it could pass through the process very, very quickly. If it doesn't, then of course, it'll have to be left for a future day. This past week, we just had in Hawaii, just on Tuesday, the Green Amendment passed out of the Senate. We need it to now pass out of the House by a 2/3 vote. And if it did that, 2/3 vote each house just once, it would go before the people. And we've just started having hearings in the state of Maine. And so anyway, each state is at a different level, but there's a lot of engagement and activity. It's not easy anywhere, but it's all dependent upon the people and the legislators for whether or not it's going to happen.
Yeah. I just looked at Washington State. It requires 2/3 of both houses, the House and the Senate, plus a popular vote of the people. That seems to be fairly typical.
Yes.
It's a heavy lift, but and sometimes these things don't occur immediately, but they can, with persistence, time makes a difference. Sometimes you have to reach a tipping point.
In New Jersey, it's 2/3 once or 51% twice.
I'm glad that you all know your Constitution. That's awesome in your states. We actually at forthegenerations.org, on each of the state pages where there's active engagement, we put up that process as well so people can see the different pathways. For some states, when there's real engagement, what we're starting to do is an individual sort of freestanding website for that state. So you'll see that for New Mexico and New Jersey. Maine is about to come out, and we're doing it for, state by state. But if you go to forthegenerations.org, that gets you to all the different states where we have engagement happening. And if you don't have it happening in your state, if you don't see your state up there, really all it takes is you getting in touch. I mean, our most active effort in the state of New Mexico happened because one gentleman, Mike Neese, heard me on a radio show one day And he picked up the phone and he called me. And, you know, the truth is that we have a very small operation. We could be a very large operation, except we don't have the resources yet. We're trying to inspire the funders to support us, but we've accomplished so much with so little already because there's just so much recognition of the power and importance of this pathway. I am very personally engaged with every state where something is happening because I have that personal commitment to this effort. So chances are, if you want to champion this in your state, you and I will be talking.
See, somebody asked if there are any states that are doing a ballot initiative.
Yeah.
Not so far. So far, everybody is doing the legislative process. There are some states where it's sort of coming up as a question about whether or not that would be the best pathway, but so far in every state, it's going the legislative path, and in part because a number of legislators are hearing me speak at one place or another, or their constituents are reaching out to them and then they get in touch. You know, if you have a legislative champion, it can really help, because one of the biggest risks and worries is that, you know, somebody puts forth language that sounds pretty, but doesn't rise to the level of being a green amendment. In fact, in the two places where that's happened, it's because people failed to get in touch with me. And they went off and thought, wow, this is a grand idea. I'm going to do it on my own. And what they do is they put forth bad language with improper placement. And the reality is, if it were to pass, it would entirely undermine our whole Green Amendment movement, because it wouldn't change anything. And it would make people think that that subpar language and placement was the same thing as having a Green Amendment. You saw that map where I showed you all those states in purple. All those states have language. Some of them have really beautiful sounding language, but it hasn't made a difference because it's the wrong language in the wrong place. So I really encourage people, you know, don't go off and do it on your own. Let's partner up together and make sure it's the right way, so that I don't have to come back and disagree. Like in Florida, people went off and did it on their own, and I actually found out about it and had to stage an effort to oppose it in order to keep the lay of the land clear for a truly meaningful and powerful Green Amendment. So it's much better if we all partner up, work together as a collaborative, and get it going the right way, and be successful together.
Maya, did you say Florida?
I said Florida.
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard. Yeah, and I don't think Florida would have the industrial opposition that you might get like in New Mexico. There's a lot of oil, and those people are going to oppose it, I assume. And money doesn't seem to be an object when corporations want to oppose something.
But I have been to Florida a number of times and spoken a number of times, and always there was a lot of positive energy, but it just hasn't picked up yet. But the groundwork is still there. You know, I think we have a lot of great contacts, and people would be ready and willing to get on board. You know, if we just had that key partner that wanted to help lead it.
It's a big effort here to do that.
Can you say something about legal challenges in the states where it's passed and how that goes?
Well, you don't really, the thing is if you don't really have a legal challenge against a constitutional amendment, right? Because the Constitution is what guides all of the laws and the government in the state. And so if you've gone through a constitutional amendment process, what are you going to do? Challenge the constitutional amendment as being unconstitutional? You can't, because the Constitution is about the people telling government, you know, what their expectations are. So once you can get, you know, that constitutional amendment passed, you're pretty well off. And then it's really though about making sure that those early cases are the right cases to make sure you get strong good, sound, early legal decisions and avoid the pitfall of what happened in Pennsylvania. Now, I believe that the Green Amendment language that we are putting forth and all the things that we encourage people to put on the record will really help us avoid those bad decisions. And if, you know, the fact that we're building this Green Amendment momentum and trying to get this big wave that's surging across the nation, I think there'll be so much more awareness that, again, we're less likely to have judges get it wrong. But it's always still a worry. So one of my goals with our Green Amendments for the Generations organization is to eventually be positioned to have the legal resources where we could actually help people identify those early legal cases and either bring legal resources to bear on it, or at least be able to offer some guidance and assistance for local lawyers in the state that would want to pursue it. But that is one of the most important things. Once you get it, you got to use it, and you got to use it in the right way.
Yeah, I would think with fracking companies and so forth, they do their best to figure out a way to come against it. So good
Yes.
to have a legal team in place.
You are correct.
Good.
Maya, can you say something? What's been your interaction or relationship with like some of the, you know, major environmental groups, you know, nationally and regionally? Have you been getting support and cooperation from them? Is this something that they're on board with, or is this something that for whatever reason they're, you know, are leaving to you? Because it sounds like you need, you know, you could use more resources and more oomph and more, and we have, you know, the Sierra Clubs and the National Resource Defense Councils. Are they with you in this?
I need more legal resources for me to do the work, because those other organizations don't understand this issue and they don't know how to do this issue in the right way. This is, you know, this is my concept and my movement. And so I'm not looking to hand it off to somebody who sees it as a good fundraiser because it's a good idea. What I need is to be able to take my national movement and grow it even stronger, because it requires a unique body of knowledge and experience. I've talked to state bar associations and been shocked to weeks later see them take positions that are a total misrepresentation of what a constitutional Green Amendment is, talking about things like, well, they don't put people in jail with it. Well, of course not. You know, that's not what a Green Amendment's for. You know, just like I wouldn't expect when the Sierra Club or any of those other organizations has a good idea, I wouldn't expect somebody to think that I should get money to do their good idea. Not looking for the same thing either, because I really worry about people getting this right. And I'm not interested in money, and I'm not interested in, you know, building some sort of personal, I don't know, fortress upon which I can lord over people, which all too often seems to happen. I'm just really interested in helping people in their states, in their communities, be the champions and get it right. And that's the way this is going to happen. This isn't going to happen because of some big nationals coming in and making it happen. This is going to happen because the people of New Mexico, the people of Florida, the people of Washington, the people of Oregon, the people of New York State, those are the people that are going to make it happen, right? And so that's who I'm interested in partnering with and empowering. Now, in some of the states where I work, like I'll work with anybody who will come to the collaborative in that state. Any organization, you want to join the coalition to advance the Green Amendment in this state, I am all in with you being on board. But you have to come to the coalition of all the people of that state, so the people of that state can be the leaders. And that's what we need to be, lifting the people of that state up, because they're the only ones that are going to convince their legislators to make this happen. In some states, some of the organizations that you've mentioned, their local champions, their local chapters are coming on board, and they are joining with the collaborative, and we're working together in really vibrant and exciting ways. In other states, they're not, and that's okay. You know, so every state, the coalition and the collaborative is different. But in every state, again, I really emphasize that it has to be the leaders of that state that champion the movement. Because they're the ones that it's all about. They're the ones that it's for, and they're the ones that that their friends and neighbors and legislators are going to listen to. They're not going to listen to me, and they're not going to listen to any of those other nationals. They're going to listen to the people from their community. So that's how I go about doing it. And that's why I really appreciate and respect all those other organizations for what they do. But this is what I do. And I want to work with all of you to make it happen.
Okay, my question would be, do you have any organizations like Sierra Club that have helped pull the state together to make things happen? Or yeah.
In a couple of the states, they are part of the coalition.
Mhm.
And in other states, they're not. And again, it plays out differently in every state. So it really depends on the state you're talking about. But in every state, the most vibrant, successful champions that we have are really the state organizations and or local organizations within a state, or again, in some cases, it's just been individuals. But it's really not happening because a national organization with a chapter is sort of in the lead. It's the local grassroots groups that are really in the lead and taking it up most successfully. At least that's what's been happening. And it seems to be, yielding tremendous success because they really are so dedicated to where they're coming from, within their state.
Can you say something about lobbying days or how you're lobbying your senators and congresspeople in the states to
So
put this forth?
it's different. And that's the other thing that I really emphasize about this Green Amendment movement. Like, it is not cookie cutter. And that's another reason why, I approach it the way I do. Is it has to be the amendment language, the organizations who are involved, the messaging, the communications plan and strategy has to be unique to the personality of the state and its people. And that's how we get success. And so how it's approached in New Mexico is radically different than how it's approached in New Jersey, and then what's happening in Hawaii. Because every state is unique and different. And that's the beauty of the Green Amendment movement. And that's part of the character that I'm really dedicated to keeping, because I really want this to be led by the people of that state, because that's how it's going to succeed. So I can't answer your question unless I know what state you're talking about.
Well, I'm in Oregon, but I'm talking about how it seems to me that the people of the government are the ones that have to pass this. So I'm just asking how you would.
Yeah, but how the close relationships between the advocates and the legislators in New Mexico, like it just has an entirely different feel than New Jersey. And so that's why when we go into a state, what we really work to do first is I try to reach out with the help of whoever, has brought me in. If it's a legislator, they might give me lists. If it's anyway, and I just try to reach out to as many organizations as possible to say, hey, are you interested? Is this a good idea for your state? Do you want to join together as part of a collaborative to make it happen? And then we cobble together. Sometimes it's a few organizations and individuals. Sometimes it's many. It depends on the state. And we come together and create sort of a steering committee. And then that steering committee is what makes all the decisions about how we do what we do. Now in Oregon, right, we have a really wonderful legislator, Senator Golden, who heard me speak at the National Caucus of Environmental
Can you
Legislators.
write it down for me and I'll
Really
ask it?
excited about this.
Or tell me, what is it?
Together some legislator trainings and meetings and got some of his colleagues to join with him. And so he has crafted up Green Amendment language. And he was ready to roll with it before we were able to do that outreach to the grassroots. And so consequently, you know, the grassroots really already had their, and the Oregon organizations really had already picked their priorities for the legislative year. There wasn't space for something new, no matter how grand the idea, there just wasn't, it wasn't the right timing. And so we've gone back Lisa from Beyond Toxics in Oregon and Senator Golden and myself have talked about it and have strategically stepped back. And are going to wait until the summer after the legislative session and try to launch a campaign and introduce it to organizations in Oregon then, and then build a campaign starting in the summer, moving into the fall. So that's what's happening in Oregon. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a question on Facebook. What is happening in California with organizing?
So there's been a lot of individuals and organizations over the years that have contacted me from California, but there hasn't really been, the collaborative hasn't come together. And in part, to be honest with you, I spoke with a number of California leaders and sort of similar to Oregon. These people who I spoke with, who I really trust, who really are all about, like, these are really powerful advocates that are on the point of doing the right thing all the time. And they said to me, listen, Maya, in California, we've worked really hard to come up with this platform or this collective of actions and activities that our progressive California organizations are going to work to advance together. And we've worked really hard to get everybody to come together around this set of things. And if you were to come in now and push this idea, it could really, like, it would not be helpful. It would be a distraction. And the thing is, and this is another reason why I sort of am, well, one of the other important principles that I operate under for Green Amendments for the Generations is we must be value added. I will never go into a state where people don't want me, right? If I'm not asked in, if I don't have a partner, I'm not pushing my way in because I'm not going to make it happen. The people of that state are going to make it happen. It's made clear. But also, if there are some people who want it, but when you start to, like in Oregon or like in California, it becomes clear that this is actually going to be a harmful distraction for some really important progressive collaborative environmental work that's already happening, and the time just isn't right, then I voluntarily step back. And when people reach out to me from that state, I try to communicate that now might not be the time. You know, it might be next year, it might be a few, and so I keep my pulse on it. But in California, that's sort of what happened, was really important advocates and leaders said, if you do this at this moment, please don't, because it's not, it's going to be harmful to this really good effort that we've got going. And I respect that. As an advocate and an environmental attorney myself, I respect the importance of honoring the work that the people have put together. So nothing's happening in California because of that reality. It doesn't, it can't happen.
I'm glad somebody asked that. I am too. I was waiting for her to mention it.
Yeah.
Yep, Dick?
Yeah, I might say I'm up to Seattle, and I'm a volunteer with our state Sierra Club Transportation Land Use Committee. I've not heard about the Green Amendment. But we have like an environmental priorities coalition that sounds like similar to California. But I'm thinking longer term. I can see how this would really strengthen groups like the Sierra Club, who often end up in courts on certain issues, certain local issues, and often in conjunction with other groups. This would be another powerful tool when it comes to court cases. So I don't think this has to happen instantly. I think once this gets on somebody's radar, maybe it'll become part of the package next year or the year after.
Yep.
Because it's one of those things that can bring people together and coalesce things. So I wouldn't worry about if they say not this year.
Yeah, no, I never worry. I got lots to do. So, and you know, the power and the energy is really there. Like I said, you know, just when going into 2020, I only had 4 states with approvals, and now I'm up to 11, right? So, you know, it's really there, and it all happens through wonderful opportunities like this to spread the word, to talk about it, to answer questions. And you can hear I'm real honest about answering questions. Like, I don't mince any words about what I think is the right strategy and why I think it's the right strategy and who are the right partners and players and how to do it. Because I think about this day in and day out very, very deeply. I have been an environmental advocate my entire life. And I really respect the power and importance of advocates who are willing to be on the point. Not the lowest common denominator. Let's rub shoulders with legislators because it makes us feel good advocates, but really being out there on the point. And so that's how I come to this work and how I approach it. But also, if any of you are, you know, like you mentioned it, you just mentioned another organization. I mean, if any of you are part of other organizations or collaboratives that invite speakers in, and you would be interested in me sharing this vision and idea with that other collaborative or group, I would be, you know, thrilled and honored to do it. The forthegenerations.org website, we've got three documentary episodes up already. We have more that are in the works that really share the story. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New Mexico are all up there. We've got a really powerful piece about the environmental justice values of a constitutional green amendment, where I was honored by about 24 civil and environmental rights leaders joined with me to sort of help deliver this that I had crafted.
You want it?
At forthegenerations.org. You can use the
I haven't heard anything about this before.
Yeah, I know, it just sounds really interesting.
It is.
Somebody needs to mute.
I can do that,
It's-
I think.
needs to be
Yes,
that.
you can.
Yeah, well, it's giving me more instead of mute. I don't know why.
Why, how is this different from like Rights for the Environment? Like we saw a vote for Rights for Lake Erie.
Yeah, so this is really a great question, and it's really fundamentally different. It's also fundamentally different from the youth climate litigation, you know, the Juliana litigation people hear about, and it's fundamentally different from the Green New Deal. And I actually have a writing on that I have up on the forthegenerations.org website, because I think it's really important. So rights of nature is really about giving nature a voice in the courtroom. And so right now, if you want to challenge a violation of a constitution or of an environmental law because a river is being polluted or, you know, damaged, you have to have a person who's been injured to go into the courtroom and say, I've been injured by the violation of this law, and I am here to enforce this law and to stop the pollution or the environmental degradation, the illegal pollution or environmental degradation that's happening. With rights of nature, what you're saying is you're trying to cut out the middleman, very literally, to say that nature doesn't need a person to have been injured for it to be entitled to go into the courtroom and enforce environmental protection laws that are being violated and resulting in pollution and degradation of the environment. The river itself is the plaintiff trying to enforce the laws on the books. The thing is, and that's great, and I believe in it, and I believe in the rights of nature, and I have a very personal, deep connection with nature myself. So I believe deeply in the concept, but rights of nature is fundamentally about that access to the courtroom and enforcement of the laws on the books. And the truth is, if the laws you have on the books suck and aren't properly protecting the environment and are allowing PFAS and fracking and deforestation and the loss of species and dredging projects that are, and all of these things that are just resulting in a climate crisis and all this pollution and environmental degradation that's destroying lives, it doesn't matter if it's a person that's able to go into the courtroom and enforce those laws or nature that's going into the courtroom and enforcing those laws. Fundamentally, the laws on the books aren't good enough to accomplish the job. What a constitutional green amendment does is it raises the bar, right? It's not just now about the laws on the books. It's about the right to clean water and clean air, a stable climate and healthy environments. And so if there's a gap in the law, and there's some sort of activity or industry that's being allowed to advance and degrade the environment in devastating ways, the absence of law doesn't matter because now you can rely on the Constitution as your legal hook to get into the courtroom, right? So a green amendment raises the bar and increases environmental protection overall for everyone. Whereas rights of nature is about helping to enforce the laws that are on the books, but doesn't correct the deficiencies, the many deficiencies, because those laws are still fundamentally about permitting and managing pollution, not preventing it. A green amendment is about preventing the pollution that's happening in the first place. So that's the difference.
My home state is Iowa. I just looked it up. The last constitutional amendment to go through was 1992. It's very hard to do. 2 consecutive legislatures have to pass it. So if they pass it this year, they would have to pass it again in 2023 or 2024. And then it's put out to a vote to the people. You're not going to get it to go through the legislature because farmers would be up in arms if we were going to tell them they couldn't pollute the rivers. And our farm is on the Des Moines River. We used to be able to fish in it. We wouldn't think of eating a fish out of that river at this point. It's just an agricultural runoff sewer.
Well, one of the things, and I'm glad you raised that. So really what we try to also, and I hear you totally, but what we really try to do, of course, is make the point that, right, the farmers need clean water as well. And one of the things too is in every state, we really, again, we try to make the Green Amendment unique and best serve the needs of that state. And so in New Mexico, very recently, one of the things that we've added is to the list of resources to which you are entitled: clean water, clean air, healthy soils is amongst them. And that is of real interest to maybe not all, maybe not your factory farmers, but to a lot of farmers.
No.
Because they need healthy soil. They want it protected from erosion and other things. It also serves, indigenous communities that have suffered from, legacy contamination by industry and others. But so in a state like yours, we might think about what are those, what are those other natural resources that are really important to the farmers as well as everybody else, and might help them reflect on this in a little bit of a different way that feels more empowering. Might take time, it might take work, but it's really worth it because so, and you're right, a constitution's a high bar, right? It's not easy.
No. Well, it isn't going to happen for a long while. A few people are going to have to die before we can make it that important. The Des Moines Water Works was spending $1 million a day removing nitrogen from the water. And it used to be there were 170 or 80 days. Now it's up to 220 or 30, I think. So, and they sued the counties that were putting all this nitrogen in the water because there are things they could do. They could put in buffer zones and things. And it got thrown out. The Supreme Court wouldn't hear it. So
well, the other thing that I also like to just share is in my experience is there is victory not just in the accomplishment of the actual amendment, But the whole process, because it changes and shifts the way people think about and talk about water and air and the environment, it starts to entirely change the conversation that happens in a state around the environment. And it really starts to change people's expectations of their government officials. Most people, they don't think about the right to clean water and clean air. They either believe they have it, they've gone to some rally where they were told they have it, but they don't actually realize that you don't actually have a right. I mean, what use is an inalienable right to clean water if you can't enforce it at all?
Yeah.
Right? Like so people don't think about this idea of environmental rights usually until they've heard me speak about it or they've read my book or something, because you don't learn about it because you don't have it, you never had it. But we're trying to change that. And so when we start to change people's thinking and they realize, whoa, I have a right to free speech, I have a right to bear arms, but I don't have a right to a clean, healthy glass of water out of my faucet. I don't have a right to a breath of air that's not going to make me drop on the ground with an asthma attack or a heart attack. That's crazy. And so then we're changing the conversation, the way we're changing expectations, and just that whole raising the bar of expectations, that's a necessary part of the process in a Green Amendment movement, can also just be very beneficial for environmental advocacy all the way around. At least that's been my experience.
No, you're right. So we've kept you here for about an hour and a half, but only because you came early.
And it's fun. I love it. I love it. Such wonderful people.
It's like you must be in Hawaii. You've got so much energy for 9:15 at night.
I really, truly, I really appreciate the opportunity. I really believe in this pathway. And I really would love to work with anyone and everyone. Already working with Adam in New Mexico. So, everyone who wants to be part of this movement, let's get together and do it.
Good.
I know you have a few UU societies lined up to speak to in New Jersey here. Congratulations on the Delaware River Basin Commission decision.
Oh, thank you.
Watching for the new rules, hoping that they don't.
Yep, thank you, Sally. Yeah, we took a moratorium we had on fracking since 2010 in the Delaware River watershed, all 4 states, or the portions of 4 states. We've gotten a moratorium against fracking since before it came into our watershed, and we got a portion of that protection turned into a permanent ban, and we're on a pathway to get the whole thing banned. So it was a really big success about two weeks ago for our watershed. I'm with.
Well, listen, if there aren't any other, is there any other last questions people want to ask before we let Maya get some well-deserved rest here?
Adam, I would just like to ask one question. Maya, are you training people? Do you specifically have a segment or arm that you train people to do what you're doing? Or do they learn it by osmosis from the actions that you all do together?
So a little bit of both, but you are spot on. One of the things, you really hit the nail on the head. As I said, I'm not going to come in and make a Green Amendment happen in your state. You and the people of your state are going to make it happen. And so what we try to do with Green Amendments for the Generations is create that steering committee so all the strategies and decisions come from, the people of the state. But then we also work to educate through a variety of different mechanisms. And we actually have a leadership training initiative that we started to implement in each state. And those who want to come and dive more deeply into why a Green Amendment is so powerful, how can you answer those tough questions that you're going to be hit with? How do you anticipate questions? What do you do when you get questions you don't know how to answer? And it truly is a leadership training to create more growing leaders that can go throughout the state and help advance the movement and be the spokespersons in their communities, bringing more and more people along. So we have a leadership training program. We have a lot of materials. We're always looking for new ideas, try to work very collaboratively. So if, for example, you wanted to schedule a meeting where you wanted to meet with a legislator, or you wanted to invite your local town council to pass a resolution in support of this, part of our leadership training is helping you get to a place where you're comfortable enough doing that presentation, but also assuring you that if you wanted me, very literally, me to be in the back of the room, just sitting there, so that in case you got asked that difficult question that you didn't know how to answer, you could just say, hey, Maya, can you answer that? One, it allows the question to get answered. Two, it allows you to see how I answer the question. And three, it helps make people feel more confident about taking those early leadership steps, because they're not so worried that they're going to get caught with a question they can't answer or don't know how to answer. And so having the confidence that sort of a person like me is in the back of the room can help people feel even more empowered to try. And the more you try, the more you do, the more you learn, and the less you need somebody like me in the back of the room. So it's all about turning everybody who wants to be a leader and can be a leader in advancing the Green Amendment movement to doing exactly that.
Thank you.
You want to do a leadership training?
No, I'm still,
All right, we'll get you there.
Carl, you just muted yourself.
I know, I had to laugh.
See, you can see I'm trying to pull everybody in.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Maya. I really appreciate it. I think you helped inform us, and we did record this, and we're already talking about maybe, having a discussion based on your book. And so hopefully you planted some seeds here. I think you have. I want to thank you very much. And Molly Atz, I want to thank you too for helping put this together and feeding us all this information in the chat as we've been going along. That's been very helpful.
That's wonderful. And maybe, I love that. I love all those ideas. And maybe if you want to do a UU leadership training, just, so people can experience that and think about it a little bit more, we could come up with some sort of concept for that as well.
Well, how about next year for General Assembly? That's our annual convention. This year would have been good because it would have been Zoom, but it's too late to put it in for that.
Well, I will be happy to Zoom or travel wherever, whenever.
It will be in Portland next June, the last full week.
Well,
So,
you're truly interested.
so maybe we'll see you there.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. You're all wonderful. Have a lovely, lovely evening, day, and weekend.
You too.
Bye.
And all this.